I do a lot of Straw Hat centric videos on my channel because that's what really drew me into the story. Most of the time when you hear about arcs that really draw people into the story, it's like Arlong Park where the tone really shifts and you get the great backstory with Belmir-san and also Nami's crazy moment, or Alabasta, just a perfectly crafted kingdom saving arc that really also expands on the One Piece world as a whole. But for me, I got into the story a lot earlier. Despite not really vibing with Luffy as an MC, I was like, who's this skinny rubber kid? I don't really know if I like this. But once I got the vibe that Luffy was going to be picking up new crewmates like Zoro, Nami, and Usopp as he went along this adventure of becoming the Pirate King, I was fully on board. I just love that story element where we have that excitement of like meeting a new unique character that is fleshed out and fully developed, and they will actually help the crew and fulfill a role on the crew. That just makes the adventure story so much better. But recently, specifically post time skip, we really haven't gotten any Straw Hats at all. I mean, we did just get Jinbei, but Jinbei was a character literally that was introduced like 400 chapters ago. And there is the debate of, is it too late in the story for us to get any more Straw Hats because there's not enough time to really focus on them and develop them, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But this video right here will be the ultimate next Straw Hat guide. I will be going through each and every Straw Hat candidate and breaking down whether or not it makes sense for them to join and giving my thoughts on it. I made two potential Straw Hat videos before, but they are kind of outdated, so this is kind of an update as well. And remember, if you like videos like this, be sure to subscribe and hit that like button for the YouTube algorithm. But let's start with our first candidate, who I don't think is the most popular candidate, but in my opinion is the most likely, and that is none other than Carrot. Now, if you watch my Carrot for Nakama video, I'm fully on board with Carrot joining, which is interesting because that was not always my take. My take for pretty much the majority of the time that Carrot was introduced, and before I did my Carrot for Nakama video, I was pretty much like, okay, it's Carrot, like I don't really care for her that much. If she joins, cool. If she doesn't, whatever, I don't care. Her character didn't really stand out to me that much for me to really want her as a Straw Hat, and at the same time, I didn't dislike her character either, so I thought either way she joined or not, it didn't really matter. But when I really delved into the topic for my video and really re-examined her story, it just made a lot of sense for her to join a crew. So let's just do a quick breakdown. First off, strength, which in my opinion is very important to become a Straw Hat crew member, especially now we are in the new world and getting close to endgame, and Carrot checks off that box easily. Her first introduction was literally dodging an attack from Zoro, showcasing her strength, and multiple times throughout the story she's shown like her ability to use Electro and her natural fighting abilities as a mink. It's not to be underestimated. Even most recently in chapter 987, you saw her and Nami able to free themselves from Big Mom's homies, and that really showcased like they could free themselves. They don't need to be saved. When they are in a predicament that isn't that dangerous, they all have the capabilities to free themselves. And of course there is Sulong form, which is not only dope but also something that drastically increases her power. Next we have character design, and yes, this is another box checked off for me because she's a mink, somebody that the Straw Hats don't have. Now, is she similar to Chopper? Yes, she's very similar to Chopper, not only in the fact that they're both animals, but also her personality as well. But it is still different. It's a completely different race. Chopper is an actual animal that ate a devil fruit, okay? So there's differences there. She can go Sulong, she could use Electro, and there's no devil fruit elements that are really holding her back or increasing her power. Like, she could still swim, we don't have to worry about her drowning, and also we don't have to like speculate what her devil fruit awakening would be because she's not a devil fruit user. So character design and uniqueness is a box checked off for me. She fits that diversity quota for the Straw Hats. Next, crew dynamic, and honestly she fits right in. She's been with the Straw Hats for pretty much 2 long arcs here, about 100 plus chapters. No, 3 arcs because there was Zoe as well. So she's been with the crew just like seamlessly fitting in. It wasn't like she stood out and I didn't like her there, and honestly you could see her developing those friendships and relationships with the Straw Hats already. Like, she's definitely going to fit in more with the weak trio group and everything, but she also has an established relationship with Jinbei after Whole Cake Island as well, and there's a lot of different ways Oda can showcase her developing a friendship with other crewmates as well. And one thing I think is really interesting is her being the youngest and her dynamic with Chopper, which has been focused on a lot already. Chopper is now no longer the youngest where he's always feeling insecure about his abilities. Now he has to kind of step up as this big brother, as this like mentor, as Bropper as Chopper calls him. That's a new unique role for Chopper that I really hope Oda uses more than just like as a gag, and for Chopper to character really develop and mature in a way. Also, Carrot joining as not only the youngest but also with zero experience at all, having never traveled out to sea, that kind of contrasts Jinbei joining, who's literally the most experienced crew member that the Straw Hats have. So Carrot fits pretty seamlessly into the crew. Next up, we have role on the ship, and this is another one that I think is pretty obvious, and that is Lookout. Lookout is not only a role that's been showcased throughout the entire story of One Piece, like earlier on you had other Straw Hats use that position, but with Carrot on board in Whole Cake Island, that was a position really emphasized by Oda many times to showcase Carrot's ability to become that role on the ship, and she fits that role perfectly. She could easily get up there with just one jump because she's a bunny mink. I'm sure she has good eyesight as well because she eats a lot of carrots. Also, she could draw really well, so if she sees somebody, she could actually like translate that and draw it out for the crew members to see. Carrot as a lookout for her role is just an obvious position that Oda has focused on, and if you ignore that, that's just mostly just you not wanting Carrot to join the crew in my opinion. But next up, sad backstory, and she doesn't really have that, but at the same time, I don't think this is a requirement to join the Straw Hats. To me, sad backstory means good character development. The sad backstory is really what gives us a look into the character's growth and development and their different motivations of why they have their dreams. And for Carrot, that moment for her was in Whole Cake Island when Pedro died. That was her mentor that really helped her grow with her Electro and gave her like the claw mittens and really taught her Sulong form and all that. He died right in front of her eyes. Pretty sad if you ask me. And that even led to the moment later where she turned Sulong kind of for Pedro, right? She was like, okay, Pedro, you're no longer here. It's time that I prove myself that I'm very capable and I'm gonna make you proud. And she goes Sulong and gets Big Mom's crew off of the Straw Hats. And this story element even still has potential to grow in Wano because Perospero is here. And Perospero was the person Pedro tried to kill but ultimately failed. So we could definitely see a Carrot versus Perospero moment in Wano to kind of continue that storyline. And finally, we have Dream, and this one isn't really clear, honestly, but like that never becomes clear until the Straw Hats like actually become a Straw Hat crew member. But for Carrot, there are a lot of options. The easiest one is she just wants to go out and see the world because that's literally the reason she hopped on the Straw Hat ship earlier when they went to Whole Cake Island. But if you think that's too simple and too boring, even though Usopp's dream is literally to become brave, we could go the route of the dawn of the new world, because that was Pedro's dream and that was a thing that he sacrificed himself for, and we still don't really know what he means by that. So if that is something that could be accomplished in the future, I'm sure Carrot would want to inherit that dream, and that ties in with another theme of the Straw Hats all having inherited wills, inherited dreams, and shared dreams with other people. Another aspect that helps Carrot's case, she was showcased really early on in Zou, really the first person to get showcased, so she's had a lot of shine. And going through each of these qualifications, honestly, she fits every single one for me, and that's why when I made that video of Carrot for Nakama, I was like, this is a no-brainer. Carrot makes perfect sense as a Straw Hat crew member. Honestly, I'm like 90% sure she is joining. I think the rest of Wano will be very telling. Like, will she really get more shine and get a big moment with like Perospero, or will she just get sidelined? And that's like another thing to note. She's been with the Straw Hats still this whole time, despite the Minks having their own group. So yeah, Carrot for Straw Hat, definitely yes. Our next candidate is not the most likely, but I think is definitely the most popular one right now, and that is Yamato. And I think it's obvious why she's the most popular right now. She was recently just introduced, so something fresh, like a new character for us to follow. She's also insanely strong, as we saw her against Ulti, so another strong crew member. Everybody always gravitate towards the strong. And also, she's another female that could become a crew member, which is always welcome in the sausage fest that is the Straw Hat crew. Now, I made my Yamato for Nakama video before we even knew what she looked like, so I was very early on for that train, but at the same time, there's a lot that I didn't get to talk about. So let's break it down once again here for Yamato. First off, strength. Easy check here. The argument here is actually that she might be too strong, and she would kind of mess up that dynamic of the monster trio always being the top 3 fighters of the Straw Hats. But honestly, that's already kind of messed up and up in the air because of Jinbei joining the crew. But I am definitely within the belief that Sanji and Zoro, who just both got power-ups, will really showcase their strength and will be heightened to another level and really really be at that top tier level of the crew, even though Jinbei joined and possibly Yamato as well too. And even if it's not as clear that they are stronger and they are the monster trio, having a monster 5 would be pretty badass as well. Like, I don't think that's a bad thing to have. Next, crew dynamic I think would be very interesting. Yamato is another person who never left and explored anywhere else besides Wano. She also is very strong, so I'm sure she could bond with like Zoro over that and other people. Another female also gets added to the crew, which would help a lot, kind of balancing out the crew a little bit. Her age is 28 right now, which is kind of like dead center in that Straw Hat spectrum, so she could maybe bond a little more with people like Robin and Frankie. And I mentioned this in my Yamato video, but if you have Carrot joining, who's the youngest, and Jinbei joining, who's kind of the oldest besides Brook, Yamato joining would add a person dead center, and that would be an interesting thing that Oda does with having a youngest, oldest, and somebody literally in the dead center of that whole spectrum. But yeah, I think there's a lot of potential for Yamato having different relationships with other crew members, like her having Oden's journal. I'm sure she would talk a lot to Robin with that. She's a pretty fresh character that we don't know a lot about, so there's definitely a lot of potential for her. Next up, role on the ship, which is important, and this one is very unclear at this point. We don't really have any hints of what her potential role could be. There are good guesses that we could make, like I mentioned, she could be a hunter or a scout or something like that. A good idea brought up by a lot of people is blacksmith, because the country of Wano is known for having good blacksmiths, but none of these have been really hinted at, so it's all guesses. So for role on the ship, it's really unclear right now. Next, sad backstory slash character development. This one actually I'm gonna check off the box, because her being the daughter of Kaido and already kind of like giving us a glimpse of that father-daughter relationship, I think we are definitely going to get a backstory on Yamato and Kaido and really delve into that story and see what kind of father Kaido was like and see how Yamato grew up in Wano. There's also the past with her and Ace and what happened there. So for character development and sad backstory and overall spotlight on her character, I think Yamato will definitely almost 100% get that shine in the story later on. Next up, we have Dream, and yes, this one is another one that isn't really obvious, but another one that has a lot of potential. Like, she already has the inherited will of Oden, and one of those things is wanting to open up the borders of Wano. But does it go beyond that? Because she did have the moment of asking Luffy to board his ship, and that's a big moment there. Like, literally when I reacted to that moment, I was pretty much fully convinced she was going to become a Straw Hat, because how straightforward can you get? She's literally asking to join the crew. But back to her dream, I think her wanting to become Oden is not just to open up the borders of Wano. I think it's deeper than that. I think she also is inspired by Oden's adventures by having his journal. So if you want a simple dream for her, it could just be to travel the world and see the world just like Carrots could be. But if you want to get even deeper, perhaps she got glimpses of the corruption around the world through Oden's journal and all that, and her like experiencing Wano and what it's gone through. Maybe she has a dream of wanting to end corruption, and that kind of ties into like the final goal of toppling the world government. So while honestly Dream is a little unclear right now, there's a lot of potential that's been kind of hinted on and could tie in very easily for Yamato. But there are some cases against Yamato, one of which is she could know too much. Like, she has Oden's journal, there could be information about Laugh Tale on there, and we know Luffy wants nothing to do with that, so if Yamato actually knows information about that, he probably wouldn't let her join. But honestly, I don't think that journal has information about Laugh Tale. I just don't think Oden would have written such important information that you literally find out on the last island and like the true history of the world. That information, I don't think he would have put in the journal. That is just too vulnerable, and like I talked about this in my Oden's journal and Yamato video. But when Oden reached Laugh Tale, he kind of gave us, the reader, little hints about what he learned, but never kind of fully described it in detail, and I think that's what Yamato got as well. So I actually think Oden's journal sets Yamato up for having small references and being a sort of an information bank for us in the future, rather than actually knowing everything about the last island, and that way she could still join the crew. But besides that, there are even more cases against Yamato, and Dritz actually did a full-length video on this topic, so I'm gonna break down some of the points he made. One big thing is that Yamato's character design is not that unique because she looks exactly like Nami, and I can't argue against that. She does look exactly like Nami. I even had a few moments where I saw just sister face and I thought that was Nami. And honestly, that is a very good point, especially in terms of storytelling. You don't want two main cast characters to kind of have the exact same look. But at the same time, I do think her character is unique because she is the daughter of Kaido and she does have horns, so she is part of this completely unknown race, which is either a Oni or a dragon or a duck. We just don't know. I also think her potentially having a zone devil fruit would kind of balance out that factor of her looking a lot like Nami, because now she could be in like hybrid form a lot more and like her zone form a lot more as well. So that's kind of my counterpoint to that, and I do think it is a really good point. But at the same time, I don't think it might not be that deep because Oda just really likes that Nami-like design. And maybe he just wanted another character that looked like Nami on the crew. Do I wish she was drawn a little differently? Sure, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. Dritz makes another really good point about how Yamato was introduced really late into the arc. We're like 80 plus chapters in to the arc and she just got introduced, and with the other Straw Hats and even Carrot, you get introduced to them really early on in the arc. I feel like it's a little different, and overall spotlight for Yamato is going to be more important for whether or not she joins, because honestly to me, Wano feels like it's just starting. And like, yes, it's been 80 something chapters already and she just got introduced, but those first 80 chapters was like jumping all over the place trying to cover all these different plot points. Her getting introduced that early on wouldn't really have made that much of a difference in terms of developing her character, I think. But as Wano continues, which I think it still will for probably another 70 plus chapters, like if she's a focal point for 70 chapters there, that's still a lot of shine and development that she could get, kind of negating the fact that she wasn't introduced early on. And honestly, the question at the end of the day is, can Oda develop her character enough for it to make sense for her to join and for people to want her to join? And so far the crowd says yes. She was definitely the most popular answer when I asked you guys who you want to see as the next Nakama in my community post. And I agree with you guys. While I do think there are some good points made against her case and there is still a lot unknown about her, I still think there is a clear path for her to become a Straw Hat, and I really like her character. Her asking Luffy to join the crew was really important in my opinion, and her character being pretty important and pretty layered as well, I think she would definitely get a lot of spotlight and development in the story. And ultimately, you have to ask the question, like, what is the future for her character? Like, why did Oda create such an important character? What does he want to do with her? Because Oda never just creates these important characters and leaves them off to the side. He always brings back characters one way or the other. It's the reason a lot of people are still waiting for Jin to come back. But for Yamato, I think she definitely wants to go out and explore. So for her future, I think she's either going to be an ally, a Grand Fleet member, or an actual Straw Hat. I don't think she's gonna stay behind in Wano. That just doesn't make sense to me. And out of those three options, I don't think Grand Fleet would make a lot of sense, and I kind of mentioned that in my Grand Fleet video. Ally could make sense, but at the same time, she would need like more help for her crew, like a navigator and all that. Like, she wouldn't be able to set sail by herself for sure. A way you could do it is like have her join Kid or Law's crew. It could be a way to do it, but at the same time, they really haven't interacted at all yet. So Yamato for Straw Hat is the most likely destination for her future right now, in my opinion, and I would love to see it. But next up, we have Momonosuke, who surprisingly to me has some support as a candidate within the community. And I get the point, like, he's very young, he's not quite ready to become the Shogun, he's not strong enough, he's not like knowledgeable enough. So the idea is he travels out with Luffy and becomes an apprentice, and he kind of learns a bunch of stuff from all the Straw Hats with like Luffy, how to become a leader, who he's already kind of inspired by. He could continue his training with Zoro, and one big one people like to mention is him learning the language of the poneglyphs, because remember, the Kazuki clan passes down that language, and Oden was really the last one to learn it because Momonosuke never was old enough to learn that language. And against the argument of him not being strong enough for the Straw Hat crew, people like to bring up Shanks and Buggy were just 9 on a small Roger pirate ship, so obviously, you know, Momonosuke could do the same thing for the Straw Hats. And to me personally, I just don't like it, and I don't think it makes sense for his character either. Like, to me, Momonosuke's end goal is always to become the Shogun of Wano, and you might say he's not ready right now to become the Shogun. Well, like, a lot of people say he's gonna leave and Hiyori's going to become the Shogun. Why not just have her help him? And you're gonna have other people who's been in the country working on other things, like Denjiro with the Kiroshiro family, and Ashura had his own little gang as well. He's gonna have people by his side that are knowledgeable and have been around that that could help him rule. And I think Momonosuke's character has been consistently shown as not as great as Oden, right? Like kind of living in this shadow of Oden. He isn't as great or as strong as Oden, and he's constantly being reminded and tested on that. And his most recent big moment with Kaido was literally Kaido asking him to deny his heritage because he didn't believe he was the son of Oden. But Momo has always stepped up in those moments and really showcased his leadership and his proudness of being a member of the Kozuki clan. So I think for Momo to win this war and take down Kaido and become the Shogun of Wano and open the borders of Wano, that's really showcasing his strength as a leader, and him staying as Shogun would contrast Oden in a way like Oden left and like explored the seas instead of staying home and protecting Wano. But Momonosuke now is able to stay at home and become the Shogun and do something his father wasn't able to do. I think that's the best way to progress Momonosuke's story, and it's the best conclusion for his character. And in terms of his role on the ship as an apprentice, I just don't think it makes sense. Like, I don't think the Straw Hats are fit to handle a liability with an apprentice. Every single Straw Hat to me has to have enough power to really handle themselves. Like Kara and Nami showcasing their strength last chapter by escaping the homies is like the bare minimum of what it needs to become a Straw Hat. Like in these situations where it's not that dangerous, you shouldn't be required to get saved. Like Momonosuke, if he was attacked by a homie, would definitely need to be saved. And people bringing up the idea of Shanks and Buggy on Roger's crew, there's differences there. First of all, Roger's crew was very experienced at that point. They were in their 30s and 40s. They were in their primes. And even then, there was 27 people on that crew, not just 10. And honestly, it's really buggy that you could compare Momonosuke to, because like 9-year-old Shanks was probably already decently strong and could handle himself a little bit. And even Buggy, he had a devil fruit at that point, and honestly, I would take 9-year-old Buggy over an 8-year-old Momonosuke. Straight up hand-to-hand fighting without getting a big-ass elephant involved. But yeah, ultimately, I think Momo staying in Wano as a Shogun is the best way for a story to progress. And I think speaking of Zunisha, him bringing Zunisha over and planting Zunisha outside of Wano as a way to protect it would make sense as well. So everything to me just adds up to Momonosuke becoming the Shogun after Wano ends. So Momonosuke, a no-go. But let's get to our next candidate, who is Otama, who actually has some similarities with the candidates that we have already mentioned. She's kind of in the same group as Momonosuke, as she's just currently not strong enough as an 8-year-old girl to really qualify as a full-time crew member, so a lot of people would say that her and Momonosuke would both become apprentices. And my views on the whole apprentice thing for Momonosuke still applies for Tama, so I don't really see it happening. But I will say this, although I am kinda against it, if it does actually happen and we do get Momonosuke and Tama as apprentices for the Straw Hat crew, I won't be like pissed or anything like that, right? They're both still unique characters. I wouldn't like just flat out reject it and be absolutely mad and just hate Oda for what he did. I would still be open to the idea, but I still don't think it's gonna happen, and let me explain why. First off, the case for Otama is actually similar to Yamato as well, in which she also met Ace before in Wano and had a promise with Ace to join his crew. Now Ace is dead, so obviously he can't bring her on his ship, but the idea is that Luffy now carries on that promise and brings Tama on his crew. And like I mentioned, she would also become an apprentice like Momonosuke, and honestly, I think the whole apprentice thing, other than the fact that I just don't think it makes sense for the Straw Hat crew, it's kind of a shortcut. Like with all these other people, we go through all these like hurdles of like, oh, do they have this? Do they fit this? Do they fit this? But for these two little kids, we're just like, oh, their role on the ship doesn't matter. They'll be an apprentice. Oh, they're not strong enough, doesn't matter. They'll be an apprentice. It's a very convenient way to try to get them onto the crew. But even besides that point, the promise Ace had with Otama was that he would take her out to sea when she became strong enough, or in his words, became a bewitching kunoichi. And right now, she's just not that. She's only 8 years old still. She's not very strong. She does have a very unique devil fruit power, I'll give her that. But as far as taking on other people, she's not at that level yet. As a matter of fact, she even had a dialogue with Luffy where she says she will become a bewitching kunoichi, kind of acknowledging that she is not yet at that point yet. So I don't think it makes sense for her to leave yet. And I know like once Wano's borders are open and people are more free to leave, she will have more of a motivation to leave. But I think it also means she's not as restricted anymore. She doesn't have to wait for somebody to take her out to sea. Now she could kind of get strong on her own and leave Wano by herself with her own crew in the future if she wanted to. And even besides that point, I just don't think Otama has gotten enough shine in the story for her to really qualify as a Straw Hat. And yes, I know she was introduced pretty much right in the beginning of Wano, and she spent like a third of the first part of the story, like so far with Luffy and Zoro, but since then she's been pretty much a non-factor, and in this war right now she is nowhere to be seen, and I don't expect her to get involved physically. I think her power could still be in play with like Usopp using her power as like bullets or ammunition. Otama actually being here at the war just doesn't make sense to me. So with that belief, I think Otama's pretty much going to be sidelined for a good chunk of Wano here, probably even like half or even more than half of it. So at the end of the day, she's just not going to have enough shine and character development for her to really qualify as a Straw Hat in my opinion, along with all those other reasons I just mentioned. So Tama, while I do really like her as a character, it's a no-go. The next candidate I actually saw brought up a few times in my community post, and that is a giant from Elbaf. And now this one is interesting because it's a person we haven't met yet, and I fully get the hype behind this because Elbaf, if you're talking about like hyping, Fishman Island was something mentioned for a long time, Wano was something that was mentioned for a long time, but Elbaf, like this has been a very, very long time that has been continuously hyped. As soon as we got into a Grand Line on Little Garden, we met Dory and Broggy, and then a little more backstory we got in Whole Cake Island with Big Mom's backstory. At this point, I feel like Elbaf's just gonna be disappointing for some people no matter how good it is. But yeah, it is definitely going to be a big arc where Oda really dives into that world and brings in more lore and different aspects, including new characters. But ultimately, I do not think we will be getting a new crew member from Elbaf, and there are numerous reasons for that. First off, we already do have Harudin, who is part of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet, and that is important because the Grand Fleet was a way for Oda to kind of incorporate more unique races to the Straw Hat crew without them like actually becoming a crew member. So we got Blue Gilly with the Long Leg Tribe, EDL with the Long Arm Tribe, we got the Tontadas as well, and also Harudin and the new Giant Warrior Pirates. So I honestly think that was a way for Oda to incorporate the giant race within the Straw Hat umbrella. So adding another giant in Elbaf to me would be kind of redundant. I also think Elbaf's going to be a pretty late game arc. Like we are getting towards endgame here. There's not going to be a lot of arcs left, or at least big arcs left. So by then it's probably too late to give a new character a lot of shine, a lot of focus for them to really get fleshed out and have a dream, because by that point they'll achieve their dream pretty soon. So while I do believe we will meet some new unique giant characters when we do get to Elbaf, I don't think we will be getting a new Straw Hat. I think the best way to go about this is to have Hadrudin somehow involved in that arc and have him kind of upgrade his crew in Elbaf. That way you could get some new unique giant characters without really having a new Straw Hat that you have to put so much spotlight on really flesh out. One more point, I think Elbaf is going to be very Usopp heavy, so I don't think there's going to be a lot of time to focus on other people as well. But with that said, let's get to our next candidate, who is Caesar Clown. And honestly, some of you might think I'm joking, but this was actually a very popular option, especially when he was at the forefront of the story. Even some like the big time YouTubers in the community were down. And I kind of get the gist of it, of why you will want it, but like, no, it just doesn't make sense. Caesar Clown is a villain. Like, yes, I get the idea he is a scientist, so that's his role, and his dream could become the greatest scientist and surpassing Vegapunk, and he was kind of sticking in the story for a while, so people were getting their hopes up, but no, Luffy absolutely hates this guy. Like, he did a lot of messed up stuff. Like, there's no real redeeming him, especially in the eyes of Luffy, and him really just floating away at the end of Whole Cake Island. I think that means his chance, or his ship, has fully sailed on becoming a Straw Hat crew member. I do think he will return to the story later on and be a factor, but as far as him becoming a Straw Hat, not gonna happen. And Caesar's probably the last serious candidate that I could really even discuss, if you even count him as a serious. There's some other ones that we could just rapid fire and go through right now. Marco, no, it doesn't make sense. He's too strong. I also think he's gonna be leading the Whitebeard Pirates and whatever is gonna happen to them. Katakuri, same kind of boat. His whole idea is like protecting his family. He cares about his family. I think he will be the future captain of the future Big Mom Pirates. The Toby Ropo members, it doesn't make sense at all. They were introduced pretty late game as well, just like Yamato, but at the same time, they really haven't gotten that much shine either. I do think there is potential with some of them for the Grand Fleet, but you could check out my Grand Fleet video for that. Caribou is another name that gets brought up because he's kind of stuck around in the story for a little bit, but no, like nobody likes him. He's not really anything. He's not going to contribute anything to the Straw Hats, really. And that's pretty much it as far as even semi-serious options. But if there are any candidates that I missed, or any candidates that you really believe qualifies to become a Straw Hat, let me know in the comments below, because I would love to hear your thoughts. But that is all. That is your ultimate next Straw Hat guide of all the realistic to semi-realistic candidates and my thoughts on the topic. But what did you guys think? What do you think about these Straw Hat candidates and my takes on these Straw Hat candidates? Let me know in the comments below. But as always, thank you thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did enjoy, please hit that like button. It helps a lot with the YouTube algorithm. And as always, you want to keep up to date when I'm posting new videos or doing live streams, you gotta hit that subscribe button. By the time this video goes up, the King's Pirate crew will be well over 3,200 members. So thank you guys so much for the support. But let's keep it going. Next big goal is at 5K, Discord at 5K. Help us get there. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell to join the crew as well. Follow me on Twitter, I'm DKing4. Video for you right there, playlist for you right there, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.